Hello, everyone. Please stand and join us with a moment of silence, followed by the Serenity Prayer. God, grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, the courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. Hello, everyone. My name is Amy, and I'm an alcoholic. My sobriety birthday is May 29th, 2010, and welcome to the 7 p.m. Thursday night meeting, the Treasure Map group of Alcoholics Anonymous. This is an open meeting of Alcoholics Anonymous. Before we start our evening, please remember to shut off or silence your cell phones. Thank you very much. We send a special welcome to any visitors from out of town. Please stand and introduce yourself. Hi, Mike. Welcome. Any other visitors from out of town? All right. Also, anyone who may be visiting the Treasure Map meeting for the first time, please stand and be recognized. Hey, Chad. Hey, Sarah. Hey, Zach. Hey, Kent. Welcome, everyone. Finally, is there anyone here who is at their first meeting of Alcoholics Anonymous? Please stand and be recognized. We are very happy that you came tonight. If you are just shy, you're absolutely welcome to come up to me after the meeting, or there is the welcome table in the back that Eric will be at during our break and after the speaker. But we are very glad that you're here. The Treasure Map group of Alcoholics Anonymous believes in working the 12 steps as outlined in the Big Book of Alcoholics Anonymous with the sponsor. There are many home group members here tonight that are willing to be sponsors. If you are new or if you don't have a sponsor, you can stop at the back table during the break or after the meeting and see Randy for names and numbers of home group members willing to sponsor others. So tonight is birthday night. The Treasure Map group celebrates the birthday of its home group members on the last Thursday of each month. We celebrate every month of the first 12 months of sobriety and each year thereafter. We believe birthday night is a night of gratitude. We will present the chips to home group members celebrating their birthdays and give them a brief moment to express their gratitude. After we have presented all the chips, we will take a break and celebrate with birthday cake before the speaker shares tonight. If you would like to become a home group member and celebrate your sobriety birthday, please stop at the registration table at the break or after the meeting tonight. The Treasure Map group of Alcoholics Anonymous is committed to bringing a message of hope to those who suffer from alcoholism. We believe this message is contained within the Big Book of Alcoholics Anonymous and our personal experiences. Alcoholics Anonymous is a fellowship of men and women who share their experience, strength, and hope with each other that they may solve their common problem and help others to recover from alcoholism. The only requirement for membership is a desire to stop drinking. There are no dues or fees for AA membership. We are self-supporting through our own contribution. AA is not allied with any sect, denomination, politics, organization, or institution, does not wish to engage in any controversy, neither endorses nor opposes any causes. Our primary purpose is to stay sober and help other alcoholics to achieve sobriety. Announcements. Bad Acts Advance is next weekend, the first weekend of August. It's the 3rd through the 5th. You can register online at badactsweekend.com. Please, if you are going, register so they can get a count of how many of you are attending. It is men only. Sorry, ladies. We have these beautiful little cards. Please take as many as you would like. There's a nice little spot on the back where you can put your name and a phone number for someone who may need to reach out to a member of Alcoholics Anonymous or need to know where a great meeting is at. It also has our website for previous recordings that we have as well. So they're at the back table, grab them. Tradition 7, we do have the online contribution. There's the PayPal there. So if you don't have any cash, you can definitely go there and donate as well for the 7th tradition. I don't know if there's any other announcements. Yeah.
Real quick. So there's an option on there that many of us are doing, and that is just a monthly, regular contribution. So I'm not going to so you can set up so that it's reoccurring.
Any other announcements that I missed? All right.
Oh, yep, I got another one.
Yeah.
Sorry. Treasure Map meeting, first annual picnic, August 18th, Omar Park. It's 11 to 3:30. We'll have Kim is just in here, Dee. Oh, she's our picnic chairperson. And so I'm sure there'll be flyers and things like that that are sent around during a group. We want to make sure that they're invited, families are invited, children are invited, spouses are invited, everybody's invited. Games and stuff for the kids, or one of those jumping houses. I don't know. Shane, you can hang on. Inflatables, bouncy house. Yeah, inflatables. There you go. And so we'll be providing like the main course would be not sure if it's chicken or like barbecue pork or something like that. We'll pick for the main thing. And then I believe it's A through M, just bring like a salad, and N through Z, bring a dessert for your last name. Everybody's welcome. Spread the word. Love to have everybody be there.
Awesome.
August 18th.
Thanks, Mike. All right, and now please welcome Jordan to read how it works from our textbook, Alcoholics Anonymous.
I'm Jordan, I'm an alcoholic.
Hi, Jordan.
How it works. Rarely have we seen a person fail who has thoroughly followed our path. Those who do not recover are people who cannot or will not completely give themselves to this simple program, usually men and women who are constitutionally incapable of being honest with themselves. There are such unfortunates. They are not at fault. They seem to have been born that way. They are naturally incapable of grasping and developing a manner of living which demands rigorous honesty. Their chances are less than average. There are those, too, who suffer from grave emotional and mental disorders, but many of them do recover if they have the capacity to be honest. Our stories disclose in a general way what we used to be like, what happened, and what we are like now. If you have decided you want what we have and are willing to go to any length to get it, then you are ready to take certain steps. At some of these we balked. We thought we could find an easier, softer way, but we could not. With all the earnestness at our command, we beg of you to be fearless and thorough from the very start. Some of us have tried to hold on to our old ideas, and the result was nil until we let go absolutely. Remember that we deal with alcohol, cunning, baffling, and powerful. Without help, it is too much for us, but there is one who has all power, and that one is God. May you find him now. Half measures availed us nothing. We stood at the turning point. We asked his protection and care with complete abandon. Here are the steps we took, which are suggested as program of recovery. 1, we admitted we were powerless over alcohol, that our lives had become unmanageable. 2, came to believe that a power greater than ourselves could restore us to sanity. 3, made a decision to turn our will and our lives over to the care of God as we understood him. 4, made a searching and fearless moral inventory of ourselves. 5, admitted to God, to ourselves, and to another human being the exact nature of our wrongs. 6, we're entirely ready to have God remove all these defects of character. 7, humbly asked him to remove our shortcomings. 8, made a list of all persons we had harmed and became willing to make amends to them all. 9, made direct amends to such people wherever possible, except when to do so would injure them or others. 10, continued to take personal inventory, and when we were wrong, promptly admitted it. 11, sought through prayer and meditation to improve our conscious contact with God as we understood him, praying only for the knowledge of his will for us and the power to carry that out. 12, having had a spiritual awakening as a result of these steps, we tried to carry this message to alcoholics and to practice these principles in all our affairs. Many of us exclaimed, "What an order, I can't go through with it." Do not be discouraged. No one among us has been able to maintain anything like perfect adherence to these principles. We are not saints. The point is that we are willing to grow along spiritual lines. The principles we have set down are guides to progress. We claim spiritual progress rather than spiritual perfection. our description of the alcoholic, the chapter to the agnostic, and our personal adventures before and after make clear 3 pertinent ideas. A, that we are alcoholic and could not manage our own lives. B, that probably no human power could have relieved our alcoholism. And C, God could and would if you were sought.
Thanks, Jordan.
Thanks, Jordan. Thank you, Jordan. And now please welcome Patrick to read our 12 traditions as we pass the baskets. Thank you in advance for your generosity and support. Tradition 7 states every AA group ought to be fully self-supporting, declining outside contributions. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Patrick, and I am an alcoholic. Short version. All right. 1, our common welfare should come first. Personal recovery depends upon AA unity. 2, for our group purpose, there is but one ultimate authority, a loving God as he may express himself in our group conscience. Our leaders are but trusted servants, they do not govern. 3, the only requirement for AA membership is a desire to stop drinking. 4, each group ought to be autonomous except in matters affecting other groups or AA as a whole. 5, each group has but one primary purpose, to carry its message to the alcoholic who still suffers. 6, an AA group ought never endorse, finance, or lend the AA name to any related facility or outside enterprise, lest problems of money, property, and prestige divert us from our primary purpose. 7, every AA group ought to be fully self-supporting, declining outside contributions. 8, Alcoholics Anonymous should remain forever non-professional, but our service centers may employ special workers. 9, AA as such ought never be organized, but we may create service boards or committees directly responsible to those they serve. 10, Alcoholics Anonymous has no opinion on outside issues, hence the AA name ought never be drawn into public controversy. 11, our public relations policy is based on attraction rather than promotion. We need to always maintain personal anonymity at the level of press, radio, and films. 12, anonymity is the spiritual foundation of all our traditions, ever reminding us to place principles before personalities.
Thank you, Patrick. We talk a lot about home group membership at the Treasure Map group because we believe it is vital to our recovery. What does it mean to be a home group member? Here's a brief excerpt from the AA General Service Conference approved pamphlet on the AA group. Traditionally, most AA members through the years have found it important to belong to one group that they call their home group. This is the group where they accept service responsibilities and try to sustain friendships. And although all AA members are usually welcome at all groups and feel at home at any of these meetings, the concept of the home group has still remained the strongest bond between the AA member and the fellowship. With membership comes the right to vote on issues that might affect the group and might also affect AA as a whole, a process that forms the very cornerstone of AA's service structure. As with all group conscious matters, each AA member has one vote, and this ideally is voiced through the home group. Over the years, the very essence of AA strength has remained with our home group, which for many members becomes our extended family. Once isolated by our drinking, we find in the home group a solid, continuing support system, friends, and very often a sponsor. We also learn firsthand through the group's workings how to place principles before personalities in the interest of carrying the AA message. Talking about her own group, a member says, part of my commitment is to show up at my home group meetings, greet newcomers at the door, and be available to them, not only for them, but for me. My fellow group members are the people who know me, listen to me, and steer me straight when I'm off in left field. They give me their experience, strength, and AA love, enabling me to pass it on to the alcoholic who still suffers. If you are interested in making the Treasure Map meeting your home group, please see Randy at the back table at the break or after the meeting. Now it's birthday night. Woohoo! So, I know that we have 2 birthdays for sure. And I'm just learning how to read larger Roman numerals. So, with 12 years. Scott.
My name's Scott and I'm an alcoholic. I would have taken some ramen noodles. That got me. It's by the grace of God, sponsorship, and the program outlined in the big book that I haven't found necessary to take a drink since July 19th, 2006. And for that, I am grateful. Birthdays for me have always been a night of gratitude. I'm specifically grateful this year for the Treasure Map group because it's my new home group, and I've been kind of looking for a steady home group that I want to be a part of and committed to every week. So I'm glad to be here, and I'm glad to be a part of this. I want to thank my wife, who couldn't be here tonight, and my 4 kids for kind of supporting me through this process. I wasn't drinking when I got married or had my kids, but they still get to deal with some of the alcoholism that I have when I'm not doing what I'm supposed to do in this program. And my wife is a grateful member of Al-Anon, and we have found good friends in AA and Al-Anon who have a common goal with us that we're trying to grow spiritually along this journey and try to be better people every day. I want to thank my sponsor. I want to thank my friends in AA who over the years have helped me through good times and bad times. And I kind of always like to tell the story when I'm at the podium that, you know, in my wedding, when I first came to AA, I thought it was those AA people in my real life, right? I wanted to segment the 2 portions. And, you know, in my wedding you know, my best man and 2 of my groomsmen were AA members. I've got a brother-in-law who is a member of Alcoholics Anonymous, who I introduced to my wife's little sister. I've got a great group of friends, and what I found is that the people in Alcoholics Anonymous are the people that I want to be like and I want to be around. So I'm grateful for all of you, and with that, I'll pass.
And then we have 19 years for Dan.
My name's Dan. I'm an alcoholic. Wow. Well, the first thing I want to say is I wouldn't consider myself the gold standard of AA. So take everything I say with a grain of salt. But having said that, I want to thank everybody putting this meeting together, because these 12 steps, which was taught to me by other members of AA, some of them are in this room, is what saved my life. I remember 19 years ago, one of the first things I read in the big book was, and I'm probably going to misquote it, but I think it's in There Is a Solution. It says, they're offering something that's going to solve all your problems. And I remember reading that and I thought, you bet. No way. And I'm up here today to tell you that's absolutely true. I couldn't believe that was possible, but I've experienced some loss in my life, a great deal of fear for different reasons. And when I came into AA, I was an atheist. So this program that people spoon-fed me, and I believe me, I still do some spoon-feeding from time to time. Not just helped me recover from alcohol and took away that desire, that the mental obsession, but it helped me live my life. I'm a strong believer in the power of the fellowship of AA, and I'm also a strong believer in the power of God. And they have to, for me, they have to work together. I don't want to be on a desert island all alone with my higher power. Sometimes I do, but I don't think that's what he wants for me. I am sometimes kind of shut myself away, but that's not what I've been called to do. And I just want to give a shout out to Mary and Jeannie are here. I got to share a lot of stuff with them. They can agree with me about what I quoted earlier, that this stuff does solve all of our problems. Friend Eric, friend Matt, John, Mike. I'm so grateful for Mike because when I looked at spirituality, I was a bit educated, or I thought I was. And I really thought spirituality was, the big book says way of weakness. I thought it was silly. And I heard a guy like Mike speak, another guy, named Mark, and my sponsor was really good. They were all guys that were way smarter than me, and I thought, okay, they know something I don't. And that saved my life. Eric was really good for me because I thought I would be stupid, boring, and glum. And I got invited to his house. He invited me to his house. We played guitar, and I thought sobriety can be really cool. And it was far more important. I knew something had changed for me when I went to the bar. It was like 8 months sober, and I was seeing a friend out. My sponsor actually said, "No, you're ready to go now." I couldn't believe that. My sponsor said, "Go to the bar." But he said, "You're ready to go now because this is important." Now my friend was moving away. And I realized after seeing all the same things I used to do with them drinking, something changed in me because I would rather have been in, this is a true story. I would rather have been in an AA meeting because I knew I was doing something important and somebody needed me there. And nobody needed me around when I came into AA. I wasn't the person you needed to be around. I was the person you needed to get out of the room, right? And you guys said, keep coming back. So I just want to say thanks for all of you guys. My buddy Matt, who's just been a great friend to me and has taught me a lot about forgiveness. I'm not an easy person to love. I'm no day at the beach, not quite a picnic all the time, but that's my own fault. I'm bullheaded. But thank you very much.
And then before we take a break, I just want to ask, is there anyone who maybe didn't get a chance to put their name on the list for birthday?
Hello, I'm Taylor. I'm an alcoholic. Yeah, I'm celebrating 30 days. I got probably 50 something today, but yeah, thank you. I had 103 days earlier this year, which I thought was quite an achievement, but you know, there was the last 60-ish of those days. You know, I was still coming to meetings and I was, you know, doing all right. I was working, I was loving my job and all that, but I wasn't doing the little things I should have been doing, like getting a sponsor and reading the book, doing action, you know. And I just thought, work's going great. You know, I got a good rhythm going. You know, things are going to be all right. Well, they didn't stay all right for long. I just started feeling overwhelmed with things, and knowing I should be, doing something, but, just dragging my feet like I've been doing for the last couple of years being in this program. But, things happened, and then within a week or two of doing some stupid things, I got back to it, and I came back, and I really feel like I never left, but I, got back into knowing what I need to do, and it's been great. I found this meeting. It's been fantastic. The people I've met, the sponsor I've gotten, and really ready to do some things, and really looking forward to it. I was just thinking about it the other day. When I started those 103 days sober, I was down in the dumps like I was just a month and a half ago, and I thought, this is my chance. We were talking about it on Tuesday night at a meeting. You get that chance where you can really take off, and I'm there again, and I really need to do it this time, or I know it'll happen. But I'm excited, just tremendously excited, especially finding this group and doing these things that they want me to do. So just happy to be here, and thank you guys.
All right, well, congratulations everyone celebrating tonight. We will take a short break. We'll come back about 7:40-ish. If you smoke out here, I don't know if there's a can or anything like that, but they'll butts in the can. Thank you. Enjoy cake. I'm so proud of you.
Thank you. Yeah, it's good to see you. Did you do different with your glasses? That's right.
Thank you.
Mike just hit me about that act. I made a commitment to you last year about that.
I can't make it. I'll be coming back from Nashville on Friday. And that's when they start. I could possibly
Could
go
you
up on
triangulate?
Saturday.
If you were to fly into Minneapolis, I'd pick you up.
It would be, there's a problem with that because my flight's already been, I did it booked and it's already been charged out, so I cannot change it. I took a look at going actually into Chicago for the Bears training camp. It would cost a substantial amount of difference to change at this point. So, the other option,
Mark one?
I think always, the other option is Mark. Or the other option
Nobody
is
wants to
we
drive.
leave
Drive
early Saturday morning and drive up for the day in the evening, come back Sunday. But it's a long drive. It's like 2.5 hours past Fargo. For you, it's a commute. But we can talk more about it. We'll go for dinner. Want to go have a quick smoke?
When we get to We Agnostics.
We'll do that. You'll do something. What's fun? If you'd like to. Bev, I sent you a text. Yep.
Google Bad X or go to Bad X.
All right. Hello, everyone. It is now my great pleasure to introduce, oh, if you need a book, raise your hand. Mike has books to follow with. Okay. But it is my great pleasure to introduce Eric M. as our speaker this evening. He will be going over Bill's story with us.
Good evening, everybody. I'm Eric M., and I'm an alcoholic. My sobriety date is July 27th of 2018. See, I was seeing if anybody's listening, so I'm going to try to sober up tomorrow. So hopefully this will make some sense tonight. No, honest, it's just a real privilege at any time. Thanks, Mike, whoever decided to do this. There are a lot of qualified people. It's always a privilege and an honor to be able to lead something like this. Bill's story, this whole AA concept of how it was born, I find it interesting is its main delivery system through the 12-step is through stories. It's what we do. Most any other book, a medical book written about a disease is written, you know, usually for the individual, the doctor, the counselor, or whatever, so that we can diagnose other people in that role. This is one of the few books that's written for self-diagnosis. And one of the ways I think that Bill Wilson must have discovered in the beginning when he went out with that vision, as we'll discuss in here, is the power of the story. And I think that, you know, again, from those historians that I've had the privilege of listening to and studying under, have kind of said that he went from a period of preaching to one of telling his story. And when he did that, you know, Dr. Bob was the first recipient of that and stuff, a miracle happened. It says in our book that without that connection, one alcoholic to another, without that connection and identification that we know what we're talking about, little can be done after that. Because I don't know about the rest of you, I didn't come in here all bubbling with trust for people. And I've had people telling me things to do all my life. But AA was the first example, and I remember coming to out of a detox, Charlie Brown's parents in my head, wah, wah, wah. And I heard my first AA speaker about midway through telling his story. Changed my life. I don't know what happened. I don't even remember what he said, but something went through all the noise in my head, and it went through all the void in here and this spiritual bankruptcy that I've lived with. And it hit me in a way that for the first time, I went from this state of hopelessness, which is really what Mike discussed, I think, 2 weeks ago in the doctor's opinion of what alcoholism is, and in its totality, it's hopelessness. You know, the allergy of the body that condemns me to drink beyond my own will, an obsession of the mind that even when I want to stay sober, I can't stay away, and that boomerang, it almost, you know, it cut Bill to ribbons, cut me to ribbons. But I remember that story for the first time in that hopelessness for no reason whatsoever. Everything changed, and I had hope that I would build what I saw in that man. It was a gentleman named Monk. Some of you have been around long enough to remember Monk. He was kind of an imposing man, and he was talking about things like God. And so, you know, it says in here that our great hope in the personal stories, it says, is that it's for personal identification. And that it says here in our preface that, yes, that happened to me. Or more importantly, yes, I've felt like that. Or even more important, yes, I believe this program can work for me. And I think that that's the format that Bill wrote. I think it's why it's the first chapter in our book, is because I think Bill understood until we could get that identification. So tonight as we study, I know that there's a study guide. I printed it all out. We'll try to save some time at the end for questions. But to me, it's a matter of identifying and seeing if we can find ourselves in this book. It says, you know, our stories disclose in a general way what we used to be like, what happened, and what we are like now. I hear a lot of times in meetings that gets changed, and it's very subtle, but it's a huge change, and it says what it used to be like, what happened, and what it is like now. And I think when we start talking about the it, that's where our differences lie, the it. I think that's what separates us. The we is what connects and binds us. Just chew on that for a second. It's how it was. I drank, and the it of my alcoholism is probably completely different from my good friend Mike there. But yet the we part of it, the things that he experienced in the progression of this illness, the things that he experienced when he got to that point of hopelessness, the introduction, usually in the form of another man or woman, of this solution to this, I guess, chronic illness, the program of action. I mean, we're almost lined up like this. I mean, he's Irish. I'm Danish. I mean, I'm Danish. He's Irish. I mean, he's from Chicago, Southern California. I mean, he's good looking. I'm not. Differences. He's tall. I'm short. He's talented. I'm not. I remember the first time I read Bill's story, I had a hard time identifying with Bill Wilson. Bill Wilson was a stockbroker. Bill Wilson was a millionaire. Bill Wilson had a wife. Bill Wilson was a veteran. I'm none of those things. Again, I was reading it as if the it and not the we. Tonight, let's try to identify by the we of this. I think three important things is the progression of this illness as it goes and how we can identify with that in our own stories. Number two, how that results in the problem being identified very clearly as alcoholic, as Anonymous describes it. And then the third part, second part, the solution, what the real solution is, and then the program of action to put that solution in our lives. It's all in here. I didn't know that when I read it. I read it last night. I was up in Aberdeen sharing up there with Tom C. and this group. In fact, I want to welcome anybody online, especially those folks last night from Aberdeen, because we passed out a lot of cards. You truly are sick people if you want to listen to me 2 nights in a row. So please get a sponsor. But let's get into this. Chapter 1, page 1. War fever ran high in the New England town to which we new young officers from Plattsburgh were assigned, and we were flattered when the first citizens took us to their homes, making us feel heroic. Here was love, applause, war, moments sublime with intervals hilarious. I was a part of life at last. Don't know if you ever experienced that in your childhood before you ever took a drink, but being a part of life. And in the midst of the excitement, I discovered liquor. I forgot the strong warnings and prejudices of my people concerning drink, and in time we sailed over there. I was very lonely, and again turned to alcohol. We landed in England, and I visited the Winchester Cathedral. Much moved, I wandered outside. My attention was caught by a doggerel on an old tombstone. Here lies a Hampshire grenadier who caught his death drinking cold small beer. A good soldier never forgot whether he dieth by musket or by pot. And again, I don't think they're talking about the left-handed cigarettes in Colorado, right? It's what Mike knows this, they were over in Ireland, right? Do they still drink out of pots? We have glasses here. Danish people, we drink out of glasses. Ominous warning, which I failed to heed. I want to go back to that part right above where it says much moved. I wandered outside because we're going to come to, a later part on page 10 and 12 where Bill understands what that was, and I'll kind of share a little bit of my own story looking back. 22 and a veteran of foreign wars, I went home at last. I fancied myself a leader. Now, I don't know about any of you. Have you ever fancied yourself a leader? I still do, but I'm married now, and I understand and am reminded all the time that that's just a ruse. It says, I fancied myself a leader, for had not the men of my battery given me a special token of appreciation, my talent for leadership, I imagined, would place me at the head of vast enterprises which I would manage with the utmost assurance. I took a night law course and obtained employment as an investigator for a surety company. The drive for success was on. I had proved to the world I was important. Now, I don't know if you can relate to that, but I can. Is that there seems to be an almost universal, when I've worked with other alcoholics, this underlining drive that comes from somewhere that I've got to be at the top of the stack, that I've got to be important. Just being one of the folks has just never been a goal of mine. My work took me about Wall Street, and little by little I became interested in the market. Many people lost money. Some became very rich. Why not I? I studied economics, business, as well as law. Potential alcoholic that I was, I nearly failed my law course. At one of the finals, I was too drunk to think or write. I don't know if any of you can relate to that. I remember on several occasions of showing up for exams, and literally, if it wasn't a paint by dot, I was in trouble. It says here, though my drinking was not yet continuous, it disturbed my wife. People are starting to notice in Bill's life that this drinking is starting to cause problems. We had long talks when I would still her forebodings by telling her that men of genius conceived their best projects when drunk. I don't know if any of you here can relate to that. I remember, I can really relate to Bill, that the most majestic constructions of philosophical thought were so derived. By the time I had completed the course, I knew that the law was not for me, though. I love that. The inviting maelstrom of Wall Street had me in its grip. Business and financial leaders were my heroes. Out of this alloy of drink and speculation, I commenced to forge the weapon that would one day turn its flight like a boomerang and all but cut me to ribbons. Bill then goes on. I'm not going to read the next part, but Bill was actually one of the first financial advisors or counselors. Spent a good part of a year, I think 100 companies that him and Lois went out, and he tried to sell the idea to Wall Street that, in the 20s, everybody was making money, is that there was a way to better invest, moving from speculation to more based on facts. They went out for a year and did 100 companies. It says, on page 3, and when he came back, obviously it was well received. But for the next few years, it says, fortune threw money and applause my way. I had arrived. And I don't know about the rest of you, but there was moments that were very short-lived for me, as they were here for Bill. But there was moments to where I thought that I needed to get something in my life or achieve this certain thing. And I would expend all my energies in order to do that. And then when I got it, there was this moment of, I've made it. I'm a success. The problem is it was fleeting for me, as I think it was for Bill. It's like this, is this it? I don't know if you can relate to that. Is this it? I need that special girlfriend. I get her, it starts to wear out. Is this it? I need that job. Is this it? And it didn't matter what I chased. It just didn't seem to satisfy that itch inside of me. My judgment and ideas were followed by many of the tunes of Paper Millions. The great boom of the 20s was seething. And here's again, more progression. Drink was taking now an important and exhilarating part of my life. There was loud talk in the jazz places. Everyone spent in thousands and chattered in millions. I made a host of fair weather friends. Don't know if you did that in your life. I did. My drinking assumed more serious proportions, the progression. Continuing all day and almost every night, the remonstrances of my friends terminated in a row, and I became a lone wolf. There were many unhappy scenes in our scrumptious apartment. There had been no real infidelity, for loyalty to my wife, helped at times by extreme drunkenness, kept me out of those scrapes. I was listening to Joe and Charlie, and they were saying, you know, they really like to believe Bill, but they're not really always buying that line. And they said that's why he wrote a book as Bill sees it, and Lois wrote a book for Al-Anon as Lois remembers it. And she's probably got the most accurate recollections. In 29, I contracted golf fever, went around the country, started to overtake Walter Hagen. Liquor caught up with me much faster than I came up behind Walter. Again, progression. Golf permitted drinking every day and every night. It was fun to caroom around the exclusive course which inspired such on me as a lad. I acquired the impeccable coat of tan that one sees on the well-to-do. The local banker watched me whirl fat checks in and out of the till with amused skepticism. In 29, hell broke loose on the New York Stock Exchange. It was one of those of fertile. I wandered from the hotel bar to the brokerage office. It was 8 o'clock. 5 hours after the market closed, the ticker still clattered. I was staring at an inch of the tape which bore the inscription XYZ32. It had been 52 that morning. I was finished, and so were my friends. The papers reported men jumping to their death from the towers of high finance. That disgusted me. I would not jump. I went back to the bar. Again, don't know if you can identify with Bill Wilson. I certainly can. Not because I lost millions, but because it didn't matter what it was. My solution was always going back to the bar. My friends had dropped several millions. So what? Tomorrow's another day. As I drank, the old fierce determination to win came back. You know, that mental thing, I don't care if I was coming out of another court case or I just lost another important relationship or a job or whatever it was, and I could be just lower than whale poop. But as I drank, all of a sudden, that fierce determination inside of me that, you know, we'll get through this, or those people are all wrong, I'm right. I mean, that, again, I can definitely identify with Bill Wilson and his progression. It says, we went to live with my wife's parents. I don't know how many of you ever returned home. I remember my dad, somebody was asking him, you know, is it tough to be an empty nester? You know, have all the kids move out of the house. He said, oh, no. He said, hell, leaving was the fun part. He said, the problem with my kids, they kept moving back. We had a lot of problem kids in our families. He said, if they just stay away, it'd be a hell of a lot better. Again, going back, it says, I found a job, then lost it. Don't know if you can relate to that. As a result of a brawl with a taxi driver, merciful, no one could guess that I was to have no real employment for 5 years or hardly draw a sober breath. I do not know if you can relate to being unemployable as a result of this progressive illness. I can. I could not hold a job, even if I wanted to. My wife began to work in a department store, coming home exhausted to find me drunk. I became an unwelcome hanger-on at these brokerage places. You got to imagine, Bill Wilson, when he came back after that year, he was a young hotshot, about as hot as they could get in Wall Street, and he was celebrated in these brokerage places. And we're talking in a matter of about 2 years here. It's one of those cases where it's like, Bill, you know, We don't really need you around here. You know, it's bothering the customers. Bill, you know, you haven't really, you're unshaven, you're unheaven, you haven't, it's time to move on. And I don't know about the rest of you, but there was places where I was always welcome at one point that literally that wasn't the case anymore. Liquor ceased to be a luxury, became a necessity. Bathtub gin, 2 bottles a day, often 3, got to be routine. Sometimes a small deal would net a few hundred, and I'd pay the bills at the bar. This went on endlessly, and I began to waken very early in the morning, shaking violently. A tumbler full of gin, followed by a half-dozen bottles of beer, would be required if I would eat any breakfast. Nevertheless, I still thought I could control the situation. Don't know if you can relate to that. Gradually, things got worse. The house was taken over by the mortgage holder. My mother-in-law died. My wife and father became ill. Then I got this promising business opportunity. Stocks were at a low point. I'd somehow formed a group to buy. I was to share generously in the profits, but then I went on a prodigious bender, and that chance vanished. He had worked for several months with a vow of staying sober to kind of get back on his feet. And I believe, if I remember this right, but it was a few days before they were having one of their final planning meetings, and they were passing around, I believe, some moonshine. And it came around and he refused it. I'm not drinking. And then it came around the next time, and the guy next to him said something to the effect of, Bill, you don't understand. This is Jersey Devil here. This is a special. And Bill's mind said, well, geez, you know, I'd never had Jersey Devil. And he took a drink and triggered the allergy, and the deal fell through. I woke up. This had to be stopped. I happen to believe at this point in the book is the first enter, and I don't know about the rest of you, but you have all these things. There's bullets flying in this guy's life. He's losing things left and right, as I did. And yet you would think that people would say, you would think this would be the thing that would make him wake up, but it didn't. But at some point in that progression, I woke up. And for the first time, I saw the truth. I think they talk about this in terms of a moment of clarity. This had to be stopped. You know, one of the evidence, I think, of God in my life intervening way before I asked him to, or welcomed him in, is that change in desire, ever so slight, to where this desire to drink every day, all of a sudden I realized I didn't want to do it. I didn't want to be who I was. I still had a conscience. I didn't want to live like an animal. Don't know if you can relate to that. Now, I still was drinking, but there was something introducing me. It took me 2 years to find the solution. I wanted to stop almost every damn day. I saw that I could not take so much as even one drink. I was through forever. Before then, I'd written lots of sweet promises, but my wife happily observed that this time I meant business, and so did I. Shortly afterward, though, I came home drunk. There had been no fight. Where's my resolve? So much of the powerlessness of this disease in its totality is that not only this inability to control my drinking because of the allergy that's within my body, but because of this mental twist and the insanity and the powerlessness and obsession of the mind that combined and stuff that leaves most of us in this position, I think that Bill's progressing to, and again, that's one of just hopelessness. Mike talks, I've heard other people talk, that really the AA message is much more a message of hopelessness followed by a message of hope. I think it's important. I think it's almost a condition, hitting bottom. It says, it hadn't even come to mind. Where was my resolve? It says, someone had pushed a drink my way. I'd taken it. Was I crazy? I don't know about the rest of you. I went through that in my life. There were, maybe I'm an alcoholic, but it wasn't that. Maybe I'm just plain crazy. That was especially apparent for me. My first 6 months in AA, when I came around, did not work the steps. I didn't have what you had, and I was being plagued with all kinds of these emotional roller coasters, and bombarded by a head that just rotates, no volume knob or off switch. And what I heard from you weren't saying this, that if I came and stayed sober for a while, my life would get better. But it didn't. I came to meetings every day, sometimes 2, sometimes 3. I was getting crazier. So I maybe was an alcoholic, or if I was alcoholic, I was alcoholic plus this. Crazy. I don't know if you've ever experienced that, because what I heard is you quit drinking, you're supposed to get better in this deal. That's not the case. Renewing my resolve, I tried again. Some time passed, and confidence began to be replaced by cockiness. I could laugh at the gin mills. Now I had what it takes. One day I walked into a cafe to telephone. In no time I was beating on the bar, asking myself how it had happened. As the whiskey rose to my head, I told myself I would manage better next time, but I might as well get good and drunk then, and I did. My last relapse of April 4th, 1987, it was on April 3rd of that year, going to meetings every day, 3 meetings a day. I had a sponsor. I had all these things, but I had not worked these steps. I had not even really attempted the step work. I tried this idea of staying clean through meetings. My last relapse I remember, as that was past, as I was going to do a freelance photography job, and I'm in a car, and I remember we're heading to Yankton, and I think it was Beersford, before I succumbed to the obsession again. And I remember as I breathed out after taking that pull, and I remember everything that I thought was good and everything that I wanted, it just kind of seemed to go out with my breath. And I remember exactly thinking, well, I lost my chip. So we might as well just really go for broke here, because tomorrow I've got to pay a price for this. I don't know if any of you have ever done that. I went through a half a gallon of Windsor, sitting up on that hill, never took a damn picture. Put another 1/4 ounce of cocaine in me, and it's just like pouring water with no effect. That was my bottom in AA. But again, this idea that when we succumb to that desire, even though our desire is to stay sober, it talks about remorse, horror, and hopelessness of that next morning are unforgettable. The courage to do battle was not there. My brain raced uncontrollably. And there was this terrible sense of impending calamity. It said here, morning paper told me down a little bit that the market had gone to hell. Well, so had I. The market would recover, but I would not. It was a hard thought. Should I kill myself? The ultimate end of this progression for me is to the point to where suicide looks like a really viable option. And I've been there too. No, not now. Then a mental fog settled down. Gin would fix that. So 2 bottles and drinking for oblivion. The mind and body are marvelous mechanisms, for mine endured this agony 2 more years. Sometimes I stole, it says, from my wife's slender purse. Again, I swayed dizzily before an open window, still suicidal, or in the medicine cabinet where there was poison, cursing myself for being a weakling. My last suicide attempt that I can recall was stopped only by this fact. I was going to eat a bullet. And I remember I was going to use a shotgun. And I remember I was going to place it, what I'd heard is right up under here. And we got some news. I was playing with that for at least a week, toying with that idea. And I got a call from a guy, and we drove down to, I think it was someplace in the middle of Iowa. and to visit a guy that we had known that had attempted the same thing, and all he'd accomplished was blowing off the front of his face, and he was still alive. And I remember how real it is when you see this and how close I was to being in that bed. And I mean, this is a life and death matter where this disease takes us and the progression. Then came the night, it says, when the physical and mental torture were so hellish, I feared I would burst through the window sash and all. A doctor came with heavy sedatives. Next day found me drinking both gin and sedative. This combination soon landed me on the rocks. People feared for my sanity. So did I. I could eat little or nothing when drinking, and I was 40 pounds underweight. I was 120 pounds when I checked in to rehab. As you can tell, I guess you gain weight too. It's silver. Here's where Bill got introduced to Dr. Silkworth. He says through his brother-in-law, who was a physician, he was placed in a nationally known hospital, the Towns Hospital for Mental and Physical Rehab. He did the belladonna treatment, and again, that was a drug at that time that helped deal with cravings and withdrawal. He did hydrotherapy. I did some study on that. That was kind of interesting. They would strap you to a gurney, and then they'd roll the alcoholic into this like special shower area, and they had all those jets, and they were all around them, and they would alternate these jets with hot and cold water, and they would just pelt them. He'd be in there for about half an hour getting hit with all these jets. They sell showers like that. Mike Price sells them in his business, hydrotherapy. Now, it did clean a lot of drunks up, but not in the way they thought. I mean, they come out of there all wrinkled. Hydrotherapy. Not recommended unless you just want to take a good bath, but Bill went through that. It says here it helped much. Based of all, I met a kind doctor who explained that though certainly selfish and foolish, I had been seriously ill bodily and mentally. And I think this is the point where Mike went through 2 weeks ago, to where Dr. Silkworth explained his illness concept of alcoholism, that we had the twofold illness in terms of the mental obsession and the physical craving. It says, it relieved me to learn that in alcoholics, the will is amazingly weakened when it comes to combating liquor. Though it often remains strong in other respects, my incredible behavior in the face of a desperate desire to stop was explained. Understanding myself, and again, there's the truth. My incredible behavior in the face of a desperate desire to stop was explained. That's the truth. Now here comes the twist. Understanding myself now, I fared forth in high hope. For 3 or 4 months, the goon hung high. I went to town, it says, regular, even made a little money. Surely this was the answer, self-knowledge. But it was not. The frightful day came when I drank once more. I love this next line. I think it's one of the best definitions of how you hit bottom than anything I've read. It says, the curve of my declining moral and bodily health fell off like a ski jump. I heard it said that, you hit bottom when you can't drop your morals quicker than your behavior drops, Been there. After a time then, back in 1934, he returned a second time to Towns Hospital. This was the finish, the curtain, it seemed. My weary and despairing wife was informed by Dr. Silkworth that it would probably all end with heart failure during DTs, or I would develop a wet brain. Perhaps within a year, she would soon have to give me over to the undertaker or the asylum. They did not need to tell me. I knew and almost welcomed the idea. It was a devastating blow to my pride. I had thought so well of myself, my abilities, my capacity to surmount obstacles was cornered at last. Now I was to plunge into the dark, joining that endless procession of sots who had gone on before. I thought of my poor wife. There had been much happiness after all, what I would not give to make amends, but that was over now. The next paragraph, I think, is the description of best of step one, I think, that's in this book. No words can tell of the loneliness and despair I found in that bitter, morass of self-pity. Quicksand stretched around me in all directions. I had met my match. I had been overwhelmed. Alcohol was my master. And I do believe that that's where Bill took step one. Now, if it was in this day and age, we'd probably not even go through the phone book anymore. You'd probably Google it. And you'd look up AA, and it's when we go to AA. We send up a flare. Help. There was no AA in 1934. There's no place to send the flare. It says, trembling, he stepped from the hospital, a broken man. Fear sobered him for a bit. Self-knowledge can't keep us sober. Fear can't keep us sober. Willpower can't keep us sober. All examples in Bill's story. There came the insidious insanity of the first drink sometime on Armistice Day, and I was off again. Everyone became resigned to the certainty that he would have to be shut up somewhere or I would stumble along. And then he says, how dark it is before the dawn. In reality, that was the beginning of my last debauch. I was soon to be catapulted in what I like to call the fourth dimension of existence, and I was to know happiness, peace, and usefulness in a way of life that is incredibly more wonderful as time passes. How do those two things go together? That is, It says, near the end of that bleak November, I sat drinking in my kitchen with the satisfaction I reflected there was enough gin around the house to carry me through that night. Oh my God, I remember that. And the next day, my wife was at work. I wondered whether I dared hide a full bottle of gin near the head of the bed. I'd need it. My musing was interrupted by the telephone, the cheery voice of an old school friend, a man named Debbie. Asked if he might come over. It's squiggly writing, which is important, my sponsor said. He was sober. I mean, I guess that was kind of unusual that Ebby was sober. It was years since I could remember him coming to New York in that condition. I was amazed. Rumor had it he had been committed for alcoholic insanity, and I wonder how he escaped. Now just think about this. I don't know about the rest of you, but you know, I'm drinking with Mike. I haven't seen him for years. Last thing I know, I mean, they knocked him up in the nut house, and yet here he is. You know, how did he escape? You know, I want to know more about your escape plan. I just love these guys. It said, of course, he would have dinner, and then we could drink openly with him. Unmindful of his welfare, I only thought of recapturing the spirit of other days. His coming was an oasis in the dreary desert of futility. An oasis, drinkers are like that. The door opened, he stood there fresh-skinned and glowing. There was something about his eyes. He was inexplicably different. What had happened? I pushed a drink across. He refused it. Disappointed but curious, I wondered what had got into the fellow. He wasn't himself. Come, what's this all about? I queried. He looked straight at me simply but smiling, and he said, I've got religion. Now, I don't know about you, but you come into my house at that. I think that might have been the end of the conversation. I've got religion. Oh, he says, I was aghast. So that's it. Last summer, you're an alcoholic crackpot. Now I think you're a little cracked about religion. You did have that starry-eyed look. Yeah, the old boy was on fire, but bless his heart, let him rant. My gin's going to outlast him. God, I can relate to Bill Wilson. When I read this, I couldn't relate to anything. It's just amazing. But he did no ranting. Now, Ebby had been going. Roland, and again, Bill Wilson was the first human being on this planet that I know of that contained all three parts of this thing called Alcoholics Anonymous and Recovery. He carried the problem from Dr. Silkworth in his introduction. He carried through Roland, through Dr. Jung, this idea that a spiritual experience or a spiritual awakening were the only things that could help. And then through Ebby's involvement in the Oxford group, at that time, they had a program of action. All three of these elements came together for the first time on this planet in one man named Bill Wilson. Now, Roland had went to court because Ebby, I think, was about ready to be committed because he was painting a wall or something there were some pigeons doing something. He thought it would be okay to just start shooting the pigeons, but he was shooting through the wall into the neighbor's place. The cops got called and they were going to lock him up. But Roland had heard about this. He took another guy from the Oxford group. He'd been going there, went down and intervened. Stories in another part of the book here. They said, hey, why don't you release him to us? And Roland had been going to the Oxford group for a while and staying sober. At some point in this, he thought about his friend Bill and he went to see him. That's really what predicated this. I've got religion. But he did no ranting. It said, in a matter-of-fact way, he told how these two men had appeared in court persuading the judge to suspend his commitment. They had told of a simple religious idea. Step 2. In our program, and a practical program of action. Steps 3 through 12 in our program. The Oxford groups had 6 tenets that lined up. But again, they were very similar and lined up to what we have today. It says that was 2 months ago, and the result was self-evident. It worked. 2 months ago. You know, how many of us have sat in here with 2 months and think we don't have anything to offer? 2 months. This is the example he was in front of his friend. He came, it says, to pass his experience along to me if I would have it. I was shocked, but interested. Certainly I was interested. I had to be. I was hopeless. He talked for hours. Childhood memories rode before me. I could almost hear the sound of the preacher on Sundays when he sat with his grandfather. And it said something. It says that wartime day in the old Winchester Cathedral came back again. I know we're running up on time because I want to get through these steps, but I remember I don't even know how old I was. I was tearing it up pretty good, 10, 11, 12. And my parents were trying to figure me out. So they thought it would be good if they sent me off to the Christians. So they sent me to a Bible camp up in Minnesota somewhere on a lake. And they put me on this banana bus, and I went up with all the Christians. I remember I didn't make it that whole week. The Christians sent me home. Because we found a brownie camp on the island of that lake, and we stole a couple of boats and broke into a cabin and found some kind of liquor, and we stole the boat, went over and tried to impress the brownies, which their commander was not impressed, I guess. But I remember they had this evening, and everybody's around a fire, and it's kind of got that camping Minnesota thing going, and I'm feeling something different I haven't felt in a while. And they told us to go to this one cabin up there and to spend some time alone. I had no idea what was going on. I wandered into this cabin, and it was all alone. There was a fireplace going and some candles, and there was a picture of Jesus Christ over the mantle of this fireplace. And I stumbled in there, and it was as if I'd seen a ghost. I just froze. I had no idea what I was doing in there, and somehow I felt exposed or something, but I couldn't move my feet. And I remember looking at that picture. It was so hard to even look at that picture. But I remember I had to force myself, it seemed, to look at this, and the eyes seemed alive to me. They were like living. And I remember being in this trance for a minute with this moment and experience, and all of a sudden I realized my legs were no longer locked to the floor, and I ran out of that building as fast as I could. And I ran for that for many years. That experience, I didn't even remember that until after I'd sobered up and looked back like Bill did on that cathedral when he had wanted God for an instant and realized his own inadequacies as I did in that cabin in Minnesota. Realized my own sense of powerlessness, the loneliness. This is before my alcoholism had really taken grips. And this desire to be a part of something that had meaning. All that in that moment, but I didn't even realize it. Everything that the steps of AA and you people have given me through this process, all the things I've been looking for in the bottom of a bottle of Jack Daniels all my life, you've given me. significance of that experience as Bill. Bill said again, he had all kinds of problems with a God personal to him, as I did. It says, but my friend sat before me on page 11. He made the point-blank declaration that God had done for him what he could not do for himself. His human will had failed. Doctors pronounced him incurable. Then he had, in fact, been raised from the dead, suddenly taken from the scrap heap to a life better than the best he had ever known. It said, had this power originated in him? Obviously, it had not. That floored me. It began to look as though these religious people were right after all. Here was something at work in a human heart which had done the impossible. My ideas about miracles were drastically revised. Never mind the past. There was a miracle directly across the kitchen table. He shouted great tidings. He was much more than inwardly reorganized. His roots grasped the new soil. It says, despite all this, there still remained in me my old prejudice. I didn't like the idea of a God personal to me. Mike has explained on several occasions that this meeting actually was a series of several meetings, and I think that the back and forth, finally Ebby gave up and said, Bill, if you're so damn smart, just choose your own conception of God. If you're so damn brilliant. And I think at this point is when AA went from a religious program called the Oxford Group to the spiritual program called Alcoholics Anonymous. Bill says, why don't you choose your own conception of God? That statement hit me hard. It melted the icy intellectual mountain. I stood in the sunlight at last. It was only a matter of being willing to believe in a power greater than myself. Nothing more was required of me to make my beginning. I saw that growth could start from that point, and upon a foundation of complete willingness, I might build what I saw in my friend. Would I have it? Of course I would. I really believe that's where Bill took step 2. It's interesting. He went back to the hospital. Bill went to the Oxford groups for a while. He didn't stay sober. I guess he gave one of his finest speeches during his last drunk. He was really a good preacher at the Oxford group when he had had a few pints. And it says he went back for the 3rd time to see Dr. Silkworth at the town, and he was separated. Here's where he went through the steps, and let's see, and then we're going to wrap up. If we can identify the program of action. The problem, I think it's been identified. The solution, step 2. Nothing more it says here. It says matter of willing to believe in a power greater than myself. And 3, it says, there I humbly offered myself to God as I then understood him to do with me as he would. I placed myself unreservedly under his care and direction. I admitted for the first time that of myself I was nothing, that without him I was lost. I believe the tenet, Mike, and the Oxford group would have been complete surrender at that point, correct? I ruthlessly faced my sins and became willing to have my newfound friend take them away root and branch. What steps are we talking about there? Yep. My schoolmate visited me, and I fully acquainted him with my problems and deficiencies. Our 5th step. We made a list of people I had hurt and whom I felt resentment, and I expressed my entirely willingness to approach these individuals, admitting my wrong. Steps 8 and 9. I was to test my new thinking by the new God consciousness within. Common sense would thus become uncommon sense. Exactly. I was to sit quietly when in doubt, asking only for direction and strength to meet my problems as he would have me. Never was I to pray for myself, except as my request bore on my usefulness to others. And then my friend promised that when these things, this program of action, our steps were done, I would enter upon a new relationship with my Creator, that I would have the elements, as Dan was saying earlier, to a way of life which answered all my problems, belief in a power of God, plus enough willingness, honesty, and humility to establish and maintain the new order of things were the essential requirements, simple but not easy. A price has to be paid. It meant the destruction of Jack Daniels. Doesn't say that. Self-centeredness. Bill says these were revolutionary and drastic proposals, but the moment I fully accepted them, the effect was electric. This point is when Bill had his vision. And he had a spiritual experience, a burning bush, of which I've had maybe 2 or 3. I know that most people, my most effective experiences were more of the educational variety. But the thing that I think that came to Bill is the importance of step 12. And we'll close with this. It says, my friend emphasized the absolute necessity of demonstrating these principles in all my affairs. Particularly was it imperative to work with others as he had worked with me. Faith without works was dead. He said, and how appallingly true for the alcoholic. For if the alcoholic failed to perfect and enlarge his spiritual life through work and self-sacrifice for others, he could not survive the certain trials and low spots ahead. If he did not work, he would surely drink, and if he drank, he would surely drive. Faith would be dead indeed. With us, it is just like that. My wife and I abandoned ourselves with enthusiasm to the idea of helping other alcoholics. Step 12. It was fortunate for my old business associates, remained skeptical for a year and a half, which I still was unemployable, found little work. I was not too well at the time. I was plagued by waves of self-pity and resentment. This sometimes nearly drove me back to drink, but I soon found that when all other measures failed, work with another alcoholic would save the day. Many times I've gone to my old hospital in despair. On talking to a man there, I would be amazingly lifted up and set on my feet. It is a design for living that works when everything's just going great and rough going. It's amazing. Amazing thing. Close with the last paragraph. Most of us feel we need look no further for utopia. We have it right here and now. Each day, my friend's simple talk in this kitchen multiplies itself into a widening circle of peace on earth and goodwill to men. We'll open it up for questions. Sorry I went a little long, but I'm Danish, and that's what I do. So do we have any at all? I hope this has been okay for you folks. I hope so. Just know that I love you, and thank you for the opportunity. So.
Go ahead and close with the Lord's Prayer. Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done, on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, and the power, and the glory, forever and ever. Amen.